For this page in the Secret Garden Star book, my background pattern paper is going to be from the 12 by 12 sheet again, and this is April Showers, so I have 2 sheets of that. And then I'm going to use the Spellbinders Grateful Lattice die to make my lattice page, which I've already done. And remember, there's a video that you can watch that explains how to cut these lattice dies. And then for the frame that goes around this lattice, I'm going to use from the 8 by 8 pad. It's called Sun-Kissed, and it's the purple side of that will be the frame for that second panel. And then for the front panel, what I'm thinking about doing, and we'll have to try and see how this works, is using this peach paper as kind of the frame, and then using this Tim Holtz die is called Brick Wall, to make like a brick wall that comes across the front, maybe with some grass in front of it. And then from the Mayflowers paper again, I've cut out from both sheets this one card that I'm going to carefully cut the flowers from this side, coming up to kind of this portion, excuse me, because on the reverse I want to be able to get these little flower girls. And the idea that I'm going to try out is that these little flower girls and these flowers will peek over the edge of the wall, and maybe some flowers along the edges to decorate it a little bit more. So that's my concept for the front panel. And you can see that I've made myself a note here. You might not be able to read my scratchy writing, but it tells me to watch the reverse side when cutting, so that I can make good use of saving as many of these elements as possible when I cut out the panel that I'll need for the foreground in the page. So that's my plan, and I'll do some cutting and we'll come back to see where we are. I've done all my cutting, and now we're ready to start putting the panels for this page together. So here's my background, the 2 pieces that say Secret Garden on them, and that's the side that's going to be featured on the inside. So I cut my joining strip from the same Secret Garden paper. As you recall, you can either use the cardstock joining strip, or you can cut this from the paper. So I'm just making sure that, again, that things are very snugly going into the crease here, and that everything is aligned. Taking a moment to make sure that things look very nice and are tight into that crease. And then we'll give this a burnish. And that creates our back panel for this page. We'll set that aside. Now for the lattice panel, I cut the frames and I did measure for this opening, and to create kind of about a reveal that's about 1/8 of an inch around on the sides here. And remember to cut a mirror image, especially this particular paper is directional, so you'll want to make sure you cut a left piece and a right piece. And I've gone ahead and put some score tape on these pieces. Now, to me, I think the curved side of this lattice is the top. You, of course, are free to align it any way you would see fit. And remember, we want to keep just a little gap in that center so that the page will close nicely. I'm just aligning all these things are cut exactly 7.5 inches tall so that everything lines up when you go to put it together. I'm just removing the score tape backing here as I work my way around. Again, watching that this stays even with the bottom and comes in nicely. And remove this final piece of score tape backing if I can. There we go. Almost. There we go. Put that on there, and then on this side we'll do the same thing. Okay. Just give that a burnish. And to ink around these edges, I used Dusty Concord, and on the back I forgot to say I used Broken China. And so this panel should fit nicely like that. We'll set that aside. And now let's work on our front panel. The first thing we want to do is cut this background to size. And we always start out with a piece that's 7.5 inches tall by 12 inches wide. And to create this opening, this top is 3/4 of an inch, each side is 2 inches, and the bottom is 3 inches. 3/4, 2, 2, and 3 inches. Now to create our brick wall and some grassy areas in the front, I've used some peach cardstock, and I cut this out with that Tim Holtz brick wall die. And this, I'm not sure if I said what die I was using for the grass, but it is a poppy stamps die called Grassland Border. You could use any kind of grass you had, or just you know, snip along paper to create something that looks like grass. So we have these 3 pieces, and we're going to put them together kind of in order. And I thought that I've got the brick wall. I think I cut this about 9 inches long so that it is overlapping the space in the middle by about a 1/2 inch on each side. And let me just show you, I just kind of cut back the edges of the brick, and what you see with this kind of white paper here, that's the release paper from Stick It. I've got Stick It adhesive on the back of here so that that everything will stick down nicely. So this is cut the full width of that Tim Holtz die, and it's about 9 inches long. So I'm going to remove that backing, and we'll see if this all comes off nicely, or if I need to cut the video and come back once I've got it off. Be kind of gentle with it. Okay, so now this side is sticky on all of the pieces of the die, and so I'm going to center that and put it right up next to the edge of where I cut the paper, and we'll stick it down. And I'm going to just burnish that from the back side here. Oh, that's sticking down really nicely. So I used a piece of peach cardstock, and then just to kind of highlight some of the bricks, I used Victorian velvet on there. The next thing I want to do is to put a piece of trim at the top of this brick wall. And that trim is cut from just another piece of the peach cardstock, which I've inked, and I cut this strip about 5/8 inch wide, and then put, I think this looks like a 3/8 inch strip on here. I'm going to have about just a little bit less than a 1/4 inch reveal. You can try it out, see what looks how much you want to see. And I'm just going to put this down first, and then put my Okay, I'm back for take 2 at this. I had gotten it on a little bit crooked, and let's just see if I can do a little bit better this time. There, by orienting the paper in that direction, I was able to see better to keep it straight. Let me turn this over and burnish this. And of course, you can trim off anything that's hanging off the edge. So it's a very subtle effect, but that's the look I was going for, with something subtle. So I'm just going to again reinforce that center crease. Now, the grass, what I'm going to do is cut a slit here so that this grass that I've cut, I've put stick-it adhesive on the top of the blades here where it will come in front here, but I didn't put any down here on the bottom, and that's because I'm going to cut a slit right at the base of this wall, slide this in, and so you can see I've put score tape on the front here so that that score tape part will stick to the back of this panel. So let me just cut the length I want to have here, which I'm going to cut the slit to be the length of the bricks that are down here at the bottom. So that's going to be right about, yours will vary, so just measure what you have, and it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. I think I'll go right on the edge down there. And then come along, move these inks out of the way a little bit. I'm going to cut a slit that goes right at the bottom of the brick wall. And it's up about, on mine it's just a little bit over an inch up from the bottom. I'm just going to come along that edge with, keep this straight, with my craft knife. Now you can see there's a slit here. Let's just see if this fits or if we need a little adjusting. I think just a little bit longer down on this end. Now let me think about which way is the best way to do it, to take off, to put down the top first or the bottom. I'm thinking to take off the stick-it, and then I can put this through here, get the tops of the leaves stuck down, and then pick this front up and pull off the score tape. I think that will be a method that will be successful, so let's try that. Okay. And put this inside of here. We'll have about that much showing. Just kind of patting it down here to start with. Then I'm going to burnish on this back side. Okay. And before I stick that down, I'm thinking about putting some of these little fairies down here at the bottom. So let me just hold off on sticking the score tape down until I think about that a little bit. So I have cut out from those 4x6 cards, I cut out these fairies. From one side of the card, of each card has the fairies, and here's, I cut, they kind of look like this when they're together. I've just separated them. And then the other side has a group of flowers that's like this, and also a little yellow flower that sits down there. So what I did to make sure I could get everything was that I started from the side with the little, I call them flower fairies, and there's a one about, they sit on a card, they look like they're sitting behind a little note card that's there. So I cut down about 1/4 inch, no more than 1/4 inch from this kind of horizontal line that the fairies are on, and then cut over to where these fairies were, and then straight down. And that way the cuts did not interfere with these flowers that are on the reverse side. So then I fussy cut them all apart, and then I've also cut, I don't know, let's see how I can show you this little thing here. A piece of cardstock. I've also taken my X-Acto knife and released underneath those flowers right there, so that these flowers can overhang the wall. So the idea is, and I'll put another piece of chocolate cardstock behind here so you can see it, that the flowers can kind of come along the wall like that, and then on this side, just, they don't have to be symmetrical. I cut these apart just so they could kind of look a little more symmetrical by having the sections on this one that's on the left side and I'll just attach them down. And then these that I released the little daisy edge from, or whatever kind of flowers they are, they'll also overhang the top of the wall. Now I want to stay clear of the center fold because they'll just, it doesn't have to be a lot clear from it, but just so they're not right up against there. So, you know, staying back 1/4 of an inch or so. I kind of like how when this big flower is right on the edge. So something like that. We can always come back and put more flowers behind. Now this side has kind of some white space because of cutting them apart. Maybe this flower can come down more like that. Not quite sure. I'll play around with that and come back and we'll see what we have. I think it'll just take a few minutes to have the camera going while I attach these, and I think it might be worthwhile to see it. So here I've added just a piece of 1/4 inch score tape on the bottom of the Fairies, and I'm picking up this bottom border here and making sure that is aligned. And before I do that, I just realized that when I cut that slit, I did not ink this, and I don't like to see white edges, so I'm just going to take a little more of the Victorian velvet and come right along that edge. Okay, meanwhile, slip this in here. Okay, and find the Fairies from the other side. I'll stick those in over here. And then coming up here on the top, I just put several layers of score tape on the part that's tucking behind the wall here. You can use glue, whichever works. I'm going to put a little glue on the front of those daisy petals that are going to come on the front of the wall. Just a little bit right there on those. And then I'll put some glue on that large flower as well. There we go. Stick some glue down here. Work on this side. Oh, excuse me. So first I'll put these on. We'll put a little glue on the back of the petals like we did before, and also around there. Now I can see my center crease. I know it's not showing up on the camera, so I'm going to try to keep these approximately the same distance as the other ones. I'm not getting real hung up on the symmetry because they're not exactly symmetrical either, but I just want to use approximately the same amount of space between the two of them. And then let's get this flower in next. think we'll put it about like that. So we're just going to put some glue on these petals here. And then, not you, these guys, I put some score tape on them. Let's see, that's going to go about there. I think I'll put just a little dab of glue on the end of that leaf right there. Actually, these flowers could come in front of that leaf. That would be pretty. Let's put some glue that way instead. Okay. And then I just put this little yellow flower behind here to camouflage the hole a little bit. See what the best way to do that is. Right about there, I think. Alright. Okay. So let's see what's going on down here. I think we can just release this. I'm just coming in behind here and pulling up this score tape backing that's on the grass. And we'll give that a nice burnish. Then we have these little fairy flowers that can either tuck in or sit on the top. I think these will sit on the top over here. And these kind of slide in there, so slide that in like that, and then put some glue over here. That's a little crooked. Let's try that a little bit better that way. There we go. Alright, so we have that, but when I was testing some things out, I thought even if I put flowers up here, it's kind of plain. So then I remembered I had this Spellbinders die, which is called A Gilded Life, and so I cut that out of a couple pieces of peach. And I put some stick it just on the top 3/4 of an inch because it's going to overhang. It's going to come down like this and look kind of like a trellis or something. So I think that'll work. Now what I did was I cut it twice, and I'm leaving a space right here in the middle, because if you have something centered right in the middle, when the pages fold, it does not do very well. So I think I'll put that there. Maybe at the end we'll see if we got some leftover flowers, and maybe we'll have something else that comes down on the bottom of the page. So let's stick these on, and then we'll be at least temporarily done with this page. You can stack them up and see what it's going to look like. Put a little extra stick-it on this one on the corners, and it's a separate piece, so it's a little challenging to get off. There we go. Let me turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. And again, I did some inking on this with the Victorian velvet, which it seems like it might be a little too purple, but actually with this peach colored with, and I have the original 48 color set of dies, it seems like the one that worked the best when I tried out a couple of different colors. Okay, let's stack these up and just get a little preview of what this one's going to look like. Here's the background. Here's the die. And then here's our little front scene. Oh, I think that one's going to be pretty. So that is this page spread and done, and we'll be back to work on the next piece. When I finished this panel, it just had too much pink, and I knew I wanted to put some flowers or something on there. And so after looking at my leftovers, I had a piece on the back of the blue checks. There's this kind of, a lot of different images. And in the middle, there's also several times it says Secret Garden. So what I did was I cut a strip across here, you can see, and I'll remove that so you can see what I cut. And it was about 1 3/8 or 1.5 inches to start with, and I've kind of lined up, there's a dividing line underneath these fairy flower fairy ladies, and so I cut a straight edge there to go along with the straight edge on the paper, and then I just kind of fussy cut around the flowers and the images there. Now you can see on the back that there's some patching going on here. When I did that fussy cutting, I could, and put that up here, there were gaps where I saw the pink checks, and I didn't want that. So from some of those leftovers that I have and I've cut out, you can see there's some from different papers here. I patched and made this little scene that's going to go here at the bottom of the page. And it has a few more of the little flower fairies, and also the secret garden, a few birds, and I'm a lot happier with how that looks now. So I wanted to share that change with you.